We are finishing up chapter 3 today by talking about a segmented bar chart. This is kind of a cross between a bar graph and a circle graph. So let's take a look at a definition. This displays the same information as a pie chart, but in the form of bars instead of circles. Each bar is treated as a whole, just like a circle graph, and is divided proportionally into segments. So what this particular graph that we are looking at represents, if you remember, we did the dead and alive and we wrote out all of those percentages. That's what these represent. If you look on the x-axis, this is your alive bar and this is your dead bar. So each bar, as you can see, goes all the way up to 100%. That's how we know it represents a whole. And then each bar is broken down into segments and they are color-coded. So the crew members are your orangey color. They are your bottoms. The alive group hit about 30%. The dead went to about 45%. And then third class, your alive went from 30 to 55, so that's about 25%. And so when it keeps building from there, you keep adding on the percentages until it gets up to 100%. So we're going to eventually be making one of these today. That's one of our big goals. But we have a quick couple of easy questions to ask. Which one of these graphs is a better representation? Well, hopefully, even though you're looking at the one on the left and thinking, that looks really cool, hopefully you're thinking the one on the right is a better display. Why do you think that is? What are some things that was important about a circle graph that makes this a good graph? Well, one, it shows your amounts. That was definitely one important key feature that the one on the right has that the one on the left doesn't. What about the wedges? How easy is it to compare the ones on the left? Probably not so easy. The one on the right is definitely easy to compare the wedges in the graph because it's one dimension, it's flat, it's two-dimensional, you don't have a height, it's not hard to read and see well, especially, if you look at the orange and the purple on the left, you really can't tell which one's bigger. But you look on the right, the crew is definitely a bigger wedge. So that was an easy question. Okay, so tell me what's wrong with this circle graph. Well, one, you should be telling me that it's in 3D. Believe it or not, that's a bad thing. Two, what's something else? I'm thinking the using alcohol. What do you see wrong with that? Well, it says 50%. Does that look 50%? Definitely not. Using alcohol, 50% is not accurate. Now, I'll give you a hint on the third one. Remember, this circle is supposed to represent a whole, which means it should be 100%. Take a moment and add up those three percentages and tell me what happens. Hopefully, after you've added them up, you've realized that the percentages are more than 100. And that's not possible on a circle graph. It's supposed to always add up to 100%. So we're going to go through the steps of making one of these bar charts. So here's our example that we're going to be working with. A recent article in the Journal of American Medical Association, and it gives you the information there, reports the results of a study designed to see if the herb St. John's wort is effective in treating moderately severe cases of depression. The study involved 338 subjects who were being treated for major depression. The subjects were randomly assigned to receive one of three treatments: St. John's wort, which was an herb, Zoloft, which you may have heard of, it's a prescription drug, or a placebo. A placebo, and we're going to talk about more about these later on, it's a fake pill so that people don't realize that they're not getting a drug. And they were given these for an 8-week period. So here's the results. St. John's wort, Zoloft, placebo, and you have some totals. And then the options were full response, meaning they responded fully to the medicine. Partial response, meaning they did feel somewhat better but not fully better. Or no response, meaning there was no change in their bodies. And as you can see, there are totals for both parts of the table. The first thing that it wants us to do is calculate the conditional distributions of the responses by product name. What that means, the key word here is by product name. They want you to turn these into percentages, then these into percentages, and then these. So we're doing them in columns. So I'm going to go ahead, just because I think tables are easier, I'm going to organize everything into a table this time around as well. So I'm going to make a new table. And so we still have the St. John's wort, we still have Zoloft, and we have the placebo. The totals on this side mean nothing to us because they are totals for the different responses. We're focused on the drugs only. So I'm not even worried about that column. We have full response. We have partial. And then we have no response. So all you have to do, start with St. John's wort. The total for St. John's wort is 113. So we're going to take each one of those numbers, divide it by 113, multiply it by 100. So 27 divided by 113 times 100 gives us 24%. 16 divided by 113 times 100 gives us 14%. And 70 divided by 113 times 100 gives us 62. And again, if you need to jot down more notes, like you need to write down how we're getting these numbers, please do. I just figured you guys were pretty good at percentages by now. We're going to do the same thing with Zoloft. 27, 26, and 56. We're going to divide each one of those by 109. So 27 divided by 109 times 100 gives me 25%. 26 divided by 109 times 100 gives me 24%. And 56 divided by 109 times 100 gives me 51%. And we're going to do the same thing with placebo. 37, 13, and 66, each divided by 116. 37 divided by 116 gives me 32%. 13 divided by 116 gives me 11%. And 66 divided by 116 gives me 57%. So why did I do these? Well, that comes with the next part of the problem. We're going to now make a segmented bar chart for Zoloft, St. John's wort, and the placebo. So you have a very blank grid. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take, and I'll let you draw in bars in a minute, I have to come over here to the top of my bars because that's supposed to represent 100%. And then from there, I need to divide up my axis evenly. So halfway would be 50. So then we got a 60, a 70, an 80, and a 90. That doesn't look like a very good 80, does it? And same thing below. We got a 40, a 30, a 20, and a 10. So you should be doing the exact same thing. So you should have an axis. And again, the goal is we want them as evenly spaced as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. So you guys go ahead and actually make your axis. Don't worry about your bars yet. Make your axis first. I'll give you a second to do that. Pause the video if you have to. Okay. Now that you have your axis, now make your bars, 3 bars with spaces between them, going up to 100. And once you're done there, we're going to label them as St. John's Wart. What was my other ones? Oh, if I could spell wart. It's been one of those days. St. John's wort, Zoloft, and placebo. Okay, so the typical way that people do this is they use color coding. And so I'm going to do exactly that. So my first color I'm going to stick with is my black. So I'm going to make a little black wedge over here. And I'm going to label this as, what was our first option? Full. I'm going to label this as my full percentage. So let's start with St. John's wort. Its full percentage was 24. So I'm going to come up to 20, little past, not quite halfway, make a line, and I'm going to color it in black. Zoloft was 25, so almost the exact same area. Now the placebo was 32, so I need to go up above 30 just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to switch over to red. This is going to be my partial. Now, here's where we have to do a little bit of work. I'm already for St. John's wort at 24. I need to go up another 14, so that means I have to add them. So 24 plus 14 puts me at 38. So I need to go up to 38 to make my red bar. That's the big difference between a circle graph and these bar graphs, is that you have to add. So Zoloft, I was at 25. I have to add another 24, so that puts me at 49. So I need to go just below 50. Placebo, I was at 32. I'm adding on another 11, and so that puts me at 43. So not quite up to 45 yet. And I have one last color. I'm going to switch over to blue. And this is going to be no response. So St. John's wort, I was at 38. And now I have to add 62. 38 plus 62 is 100%. And that's exactly what we want to happen. We want it to go all the way to 100. Zoloft, I was at 49. I need to add 51 to that. Well, 49 plus 51 is again 100. So that means that that bar I did correctly. Whoops, didn't mean to go off that right there. And then finally, placebo, I was at 43. I need to add 57. 43 plus 57 is for the third time 100%. That's how you know you did these right. Don't assume. Double check the math to make sure you didn't make a mistake along the way. So now we are going to ask to make some comparisons. So do the results look the same for all three medications? Well, if you're looking at your bars, I see a pattern. I see the top being the biggest, the middle being the smallest, and the bottom being the in-between. And so are there similarities? Yes, sort of there is. There are some similarities. For each bar, no response was definitely the largest region. Your partial response was your smallest region, and your full response was the in-between. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to go into detail when you're labeling them. And so that is the end of chapter 3, and I'll see you in class.